called She's at the Controls. And I think the gem of it first happened to me when I was about 25, and I used to go into studios with male producers, and I had a very strong idea of what I wanted my voice to sound like, because I'm not a hollerer, I'm not a kind of soul singer or anything. I have a voice which I think is quite a singing voice. I think is quite close to my speaking voice, and I wanted to sound like that. I really didn't want to sound girly. And I noticed that every time anything came out of the studio that I'd recorded with somebody, they always made me sound really girly. And I was one of those young women that looked quite young for my age. And I think they just looked at me and thought, oh, she ought to sound like this. So I got into the habit of going into the studio. And this is like older school technology. So if you pulled the microphone down towards your chest, you got a much stronger voice coming out.
Wow.
So to make somebody sound really girly, the microphone used to have to be up there, up, by your nose and eyes to pick up your head voice. It's called the head voice. So I would put it down to my chest and sing my song, and the producer would come in and put it back up to, and I suddenly realized actually I have no control over what I sound like. And it really irritated me. And when I started recording my own stuff, probably about 15 years ago, I made a point of my voice always sounding the way that I wanted it to, either because I recorded it myself or because I was very strong with whoever it was, the engineer who was recording it, who's always a man. The whole thing is, there's this whole idea of everybody is a genius producer like Phil Spector, or, well, I mean, he's out of favour now, but there's this whole idea of an auteur producer who really has got a view of the whole track. And because I was working in academia and I'd already written the book called The Lost Women of Rock Music, which is about female instrumentalists, and that was my PhD. And I just thought, I really, really don't fancy doing another book. And then I thought, actually, I'm going to have to, because I'm feeling, working with young people, I was working with young musicians, and they were naturally dividing themselves along gender lines, where the woman was a singer, the man was a producer. And quite often, I'd see the woman sitting in a chair waiting for the man to come, because they didn't know anything about the studio, and they couldn't even set it up to start. And this was supposed to be a course that had gender equal training. And I discovered that a lot of boys' schools were teaching music technology and girls' schools weren't. So the boys had an advantage when they came into this higher education, because they already knew what to do, and they were talking forward all the training sessions into areas that they understood. A lot of male producers really don't want to concede the territory, and I kind of regarded it very much as territory. But then also that very sinister thing of making women's voices sound appealing to men. Absolutely. Rather than what the woman actually, as a sort of creator of the voice, what the woman wants to sound like as a communicator. And if you think about it, it's incredibly sinister.
It is.
I tested my research. It's research. It's not just opinion. It's proper research, because it's properly, analysed and everything. And I thought, I'm going to test it in the most aggressive places I can to see how people oppose it, because then I can address that in the writing. And so I went and talked to lots of music students in various different places. I got shouted at a lot. People men became very, very verbally aggressive. And I would notice that there would be a class of maybe 19 men and one woman. And they turn around, they say, she doesn't think what you think. I think, well, she can't think what I think. She doesn't dare, she doesn't dare to express it. So, and it's a risky thing for somebody who's making music to do, because obviously I produced my album. And so it's going out there, and I've written a book about women producers. And so that was quite a sort of risk, because you just think, well, people are going to be listening to the production of this, and they're going to be thinking, how dare she, this is really rubbish production. So, so for me, it's really great to have the validation of it played on the radio, because it means that actually my ears are working, and they're not gendered ears. I don't have to be a man for my ears to work. A few years ago, I think just before my book came out, the Music Producers Guild in the UK suddenly got really alerted to the fact that they weren't awarding excellence in music technology for women, because there are a lot of women producers actually. The thing is that people just don't notice them, and it's professionally safer for them to just keep quiet about what they do. And some of them do really high level work. I mean, Mandy Parnell is a dance music mastering engineer who's worked with Björk, but it's not a good career move for people with such a high profile to sort of say, look at me, and this is what people have done to stop me from getting here. It's not a good thing to do. I think you have to be very kind of calm and just get on with producing the stuff. Well, I think sometimes when you draw something to people's attention, like an imbalance in gender, in the roles that people play behind the scenes, people start getting very worried about what they're doing. Oh, no, everybody's noticed what we're doing. And so they'll hide it. They'll have a token woman, or, they'll do something. And then when all the fuss has died down, I mean, this is what happened with the Music Producers Guild. They gave all these awards to women producers and engineers. And then I just looked at it year and year, and then gradually it became less and less and less. And it's that kind of, well, it was the fashion for women producers, but now we're going to go back to the sensible thing of having men do it, and so I always feel you can't, it's unfortunately, anything that involves changing a mindset involves keeping at it and keeping looking at what's going on and not kind of relaxing and not saying, oh, well, everything's better now. At every time that I've been employed somewhere where my position has been fought for by a woman who came before me or by legislation, I've been told by the men in the group where I'm working, whether it's at work or whatever it is, that I'm a token woman and I've been employed because they needed to employ a woman. So it's been made very clear to me that I'm not there because of my skills, but I'm there because of my gender, which is a way of being incredibly misogynistic, But again, you can't kind of out people for this, because you then end up being the person, it sticks to you and not to the people who are doing it.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is why the Me Too movement was so effective, because and actually Giselle Pellico, this is not my problem. This is somebody else's problem. I'm not having this,
Exactly.